What up, Code Gang? We're continuing building our full stack CRUD app from total scratch series here. We had left off dealing with the reading operations of CRUD, and now we're going to be moving on to the CUD, create, update, destroy part of those operations, which will technically make this project complete in the sense that, like, if we're looking for minimum viable product MVP, it'll be done. It won't look good, and it probably won't sell as a portfolio project, but it'll be done. And then from there, you can choose to style it. I will be doing so in a video as well, and from there, like I said, we're going to be going on to bigger and better and cooler features, like adding sessions and maybe some character links and things like that, and styling it up, maybe a markdown editor. I'm not going to do as a what you see is what you get editor. I don't feel like dealing with those components, but nevertheless, we'll get there when we get there. At this point, this is going to be a long course where hopefully y'all come in with some basic React, TypeScript, or JavaScript knowledge, and then through this build process, you've learned how to build something kind of cool, and then you take it and build your own projects with it. I mean, again, if you just go and build something that's the exact same thing with different variable names, like instead of a note taker, you build a to-do list, or maybe you build some kind of, again, I made a workout tracking app for myself that follows basically these same ideas and conventions. And if you build it like 10 times, you will get very good at that flow of data from backend to server to client and back and forth, right? Like, and if you get good at that, then you can fundamentally figure out just about anything else you want to figure out once you learn the documentation and syntax for it. So yeah, let's continue. I was getting a bit dry in the mouth at the end of the last video, so this is clearly a new day where I'm feeling a bit better, and I don't have that issue of having recorded for like what felt like 6 or 7 hours that day. Whew. Yeah, so we are going to now start creating new notes with our logged in user, right? So we know that's going to be a new view, a new component that's going to be using some kind of, just like our login and register components, will have some state values being held with handle changes and a handle click being thrown our way. That was going to do something similar to that. We're going to add something new to our notes service. Let's go take a look at the tab for adding a new post. I'm going to get rid of the login and register. I don't need those anymore, or validate token. We know what those are all about. We're going to close off because I'm more concerned with adding a new note here. Okay, so, all right, we're going to need some authorization, but thankfully our base make fetch service attaches our tokens for us to make sure that they are going to protected API endpoints. We have our headers will be set up for us automatically as JSON type. And it looks like all I have as of right now is just a body value or body property on the request body, right? So technically this is rec.body.body. But c'est la vie. That's what we're looking at here. That's what this that's the only part this form actually really needs. And like I said, in the future, adding sessions and things like that will make a lot of sense for features. But for now, I wanted to keep it simple. All right, so one form in my field, we'll probably make this a text input, or text area. Text input, that's what they are, Luke. A text area element. That way we can actually write like long form content. And there's some cool nuances to that when we get there. Because as of right now, I've only been doing single paragraph tests from that DnD Ipsum site here. Speaking of which, I should probably load up the website so we can see where we're at. And I can Google other things as well as we go along. That's why it's not running. How many times have I done this in this video, folks? If any lore masters know the number, get in the comments. Let me know how many times I keep forgetting to start my own server and project. There we go. Looking good. Perfect, right? And we're logged in because I know that from my beautiful little authenticated login hook right here. And, before I go and cover how to add notes and things like that, we're going to take the time to, well, notice something familiar between the register and login pages in that they both have the same handle changes function, and they both set up a singular piece of state that will set this object up with some initialized values, right? So that seems to me that we could probably build a custom hook that I could use across this project, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Just like I had use off, I'm going to have one called useForm.ts. This is actually another video I do in vanilla JavaScript. I made it like when hooks were so like in coming out of beta. And it's one of our more popular YouTube videos here on Covalence. If you look on our videos list and look up custom form hook, this is the same concept I did there when I just learned what they are, and just learned about custom hooks, and I had just started teaching, so I was very fresh-faced and new in terms of how I thought about things and how I explain things. But hey, we're here. years down the line doing the same thing I learned back then. So we're going to import and use the useState hook, surprise, surprise, from React. We're not going to be doing any TSX here, so I'm not going to have to import React, the library itself. From there, how do I do this? Do an arrow function? Okay, yeah, just want to be trying to be somewhat consistent. We are going to export const useForm. Now, unlike useAuth, which took no arguments, I do want to tell my useForm hook, that it could receive an optional argument of initialized values. I mean, honestly, it should have some initialized value here rather than having it default to null, right? Maybe if I want it to default to null in my hook here, like for example on my, where'd it go? Login, where it's simple. This is my initialized values. I have that here because I'm just lazy and I don't want to have to fill out my input with those values every single time. But if I don't provide them, I probably don't want it to default to null. I'd rather provide a empty type, for example. So I might change my mind along the way here in just a moment, but it needs to kind of mimic what this useState is already doing for us. I mean, ultimately, we're going to be calling a useState here. There we go. It'll give us values and set values, right, in the useState. Now, the initial type and the initial value, let's say I'm going to have to provide those. We're going to have a type T that will default to any for now, as I figured out my TypeScript types here. So T, you know, a lot of my students tend to think this is some like convention or standard or I don't know, like requirement to do generic types for useForm hook. And by generics, I mean useForm could be initialized as a string, an object, an array, null. I wouldn't do undefined, but you could. A number, right? Like we don't know what type it's going to be, and I don't want to have to write useForm number, useForm string, useForm array, useForm object nested, or something like that. So the generic says, hey, this function could have a number of different types that it returns to us. So let's be prepared for that. Okay, so and I'm defaulting it to any for now, so if I don't want to provide one, I don't have to, because I'm kind of lazy sometimes. But again, we should have some kind of initial values type that should be required, and I don't like doing an any on this, but again, that's what we're going to start as I figure this stuff out here. So we're going to pass initial values to useState and pass that type in there as well, so we can kind of infer that it could be anything at the moment. That's fine for this purpose here, because again, that could be a union of string, object, number, all that kind of fun stuff here, okay? So yes, now that we have that written here, we can have our singular handle changes also written here as well. We have handle changes equals an event that could come from a number of different, I think it was change events that we had written in here. So I can specify what kind of HTML element it comes from. Most of the time it'll be input elements and HTML text area elements, which will surely have some level of overlap, because those are going to be the two main types of fields I'll be handling change events on from my code base. So now that I have that event typed out, like we saw before, I can call set values, and I'm going to be using the callback syntax to make sure I utilize closures to always be updating on a previous state and maintaining it, doing an implicit return of a new object where we spread out all previous values of our object, and we use the dynamic syntax of objects with the square brackets to say, hey, find this property or add this property and update its value as our user types. Okay. So this is very simple at the moment, and really, I mean, the whole purpose here is to kind of somewhat streamline our components, and over time, we can come over here and add sanitization and, again, additional functions to clear or reset forms and things like that. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff we could do. I mean, as an example, if I wanted to actually clear the form, I mean, have you noticed most of the time, like in login and register, where we fill out a form and submit it, if it succeeds, it just reroutes us to a new view, which means we lose the state of that form anyway, and we don't care to empty it. But maybe when we're adding notes, I want to stay on that page and clear the form. So like if you want to clear the form, we could do something like this. Reset, and then the reset here will simply do set values to be the initial values we pass in, whether they're empty or form or empty or a string or a number or whatever that initial value wants to be, right? So that's something you can take into consideration when it comes to doing stuff like this. And then from there, I'm going to return this as an object that gives us the values. We might want to call set values custom from our hook here, but for now, I'm gonna, I'll leave it on there. Even if we don't use it, who cares? Handle changes and reset, and that's an idea that you can do for a custom hook, which I think is pretty dang cool to know how to do. Again, that's what kind of separates the beginners from the breaking into the intermediate or like just regular dev roles rather than just a beginner entry dev role. Let's go use this new useForm hook over in our login component to again save ourselves some code. I will say import useForm, and it would behoove me now maybe to make a subdirectory in utilities called custom hooks that gives me the ability to import them with, or maybe even just an index in my utilities directory that allows me to start importing these hooks under one import line, especially if I'm going to build any more here. So we can take that into consideration, but that would potentially cause us to have to go and correct several other import statements across our application. So again, do I want to take the time to do that now and correct everything I have, or deal with multiple import lines and get angry later when I have to change even more? For now, let's just see what we can do here. So rather than calling useState, I'm going to call useForm. It's not going to return this array of these values anymore. It'll give me instead an object I can destructure from that should provide values for this particular component to use, a handle changes for this component to use as well. Okay, all looking good so far. And yeah, there we go. It saved us some code and it made it consistent how we handle forms across our application, right? And we can see that it took on that type that I passed into useForm here. And as long as those initialized values are correct, hard refresh, go to login, right there, we have our initialized values being passed in right there, right? So that's pretty dang cool. I don't have a way to, the reset takes it back to its initialized value. So what if I just go down to an object? I'm going to cut these values for testing purposes, y'all. Watch this. Let's bring in, where'd it go? There it is. Let's bring in reset form for initialized values if it's an empty object. And what I want to do now is just add a dumb button down here that says reset test because I'm curious. On click. When the click occurs, I would like you to call the reset function that I have now brought in. Cool. Now this will trigger the form to submit, so I need to add a attribute of type equals button. That way we don't have to go and write the prevent default like we did up there on the handle click. Okay, cool. Now that that's written, let's go give it a whirl because I'm curious to see if it works or not. Invalid email, invalid password, reset test, clears the form, no problem. So again, that was just a quick little testarino to see if my code was working the way I thought it was, and indeed, thankfully, it is. But here we don't really care about reset, so there we go. And again, you can see where this will begin to clean up our code with custom hooks across our application. All right, let's go do the same change in register now as well. That way I don't forget. Let's bring in useForm from useForm as our custom hook. This changes to useForm. This switches to a destructure where we have our values and our handle changes. Voila. Delete the handle changes we've written there because it's now redundant. Leave those initialized values for, for registering, we don't need these values in here for quick testing anymore. So I actually will move that to a blank object temporarily. And that way we have an empty form. And again, the components code even looks a little bit cleaner here. So there we go. Looking good. Yeah, all looking good. Nice and clean, right? Again, like little stuff like this can really clean up a project's otherwise messy business logic inside of components. Okay, so we're going to add a new route. And I'm going to argue that adding a new note will be private. So we're going to wrap it in that private component. Okay, so let's go make a new view. I'm going to collapse some folders here. All right, so like I said, in client, new view, add file, AddNote.tsx maybe. Okay. I've been copying from somewhere, haven't I? Why did I just rewrite AddNote in the same place? Am I brain broken today? Interface, AddNote, props, AddNote props. AddNote view. I've been doing that inside of an H1. There we go. All right, we're gonna add this to our index here. You know, I'm kind of gonna break these apart here. Like authentication, authorization views. These will be note-based views, just so I could have them kind of siloed here, you know? Again, as the project gets bigger, you'll thank yourself when you do stuff like this. I'm speaking when I have like applications that had like 50 different views. It was nice to have them kind of grouped here when I began to have to alter or change things. Okay, let's add it to our app import list now that that's there. Add note. Does it finally go vertical? Not yet. I'm going to copy this profile path because it's going to be very similar looking, where the path will be maybe notes add or notes new. I should have called it new note. Whatever. And this will be the add note component. I made a new path here. It's going to be a path in my navbar, and it has to be a path on my server now, okay? So we're going to go here. Oh, I can't do that. No, hold on. I can't do that. Because if I put it below notes:ID, it will consider the keyword new as the ID for a note's details I'm trying to get. So let's see this in action and see the classic mess up. I'm going to laugh if it's not going to do what I expect it to do, but I would assume that this one was going to think it's the ID, with the ID being the word new and not actually the note details. I'm actually curious if that's what's going to happen here. So if I go to notes/new, I should get a, oh no, it did not work that way. I guess it's smart matching now. Because it used to be in version 5 React Router DOM in your switch components, if y'all remember what that looked like. It was indeed a priority from top to bottom, but I guess now this is a unique path name that's not a :ID. Now, does that break my note detail view? It does not. Well, ain't that cute? Huh. All right, well, things are improving. I like it. Because in the past, and then server side, by the way, this is true. And I think I covered this when I was writing out our routes here. For example, in API notes, I did say that ID must be above the blank route because these do match from top to bottom, right? And that's important to keep in mind. But I guess that's changed. That's pretty cool. So I might have to be careful with this because otherwise I could run into some trouble if that ends up being the case, right? So, all right. I mean, yeah, we'll leave it as is for now since it seems to work. Let's go to components, our navbar component, because now we're adding, wrong hotkey. We are adding a add note link that goes to notes/new. Okay. Close out the navbar. I'm going to close out the index, close out app because we should be good in all those. Hard refresh, add note. Did I double up my notes? What happened here? Why are there 2 notes links now? Did I mess up somewhere, y'all? I did. I copied and pasted something twice. Whoopsie. All right, so delete the navbar, come back, refresh, make sure we're looking good. Yeah, okay, so profile, notes, add note. And I should not be able to come to add note if I am not logged in, and I'm logged currently in. So if do I have a logout button somewhere? I do. Log out. Okay, so add note redirects us to logged in. You gotta be logged in, sucker. Login takes us to private. I thought I fixed that. I thought I fixed that, everybody. Take us to profile. I think I fixed it in register when I had that mistake. I did. Okay, cool. So in your login components, make sure your sign-in route path is to profile since I have changed it if you're following along with me here. Okay, so now we can visit the add note view successfully because we are logged in with a valid token. So let's build out this beautiful component here. It'll be a form with a text area element inside of it. I don't really care about this stuff for now. I just want it to look kind of nice. Cool. And we'll have a button that will be adding a new note. Well, let's have it say, jot that down, exclamation point. Jot that note down. And booyah. That's awful. That's fine. I don't care. You know, like I said, styling is going to come when we have the fundamental features coded and working. I don't care what this looks like, right? We can make this bigger, for example, at least so we have like rows, maybe 10 rows number value here. That's even smaller than before. Oh, there we go. Cool, right? But this thing will, we can mess with however we want it here, you know? So there we go. Looking good. Adding a new note, blah, 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 blah. The question is, you know, all of our tests from Postman, like I said, were singular valued paragraphs. How does it handle new lines here in comparison to what we've been testing in Postman? Well, to figure that out, let's go ahead and test something out. Actually, this will not accumulate anything. It'll only just be telling me what I'm typing and where. So what we're gonna actually do is, again, we're gonna get rid of the useState hook. Did I get rid of those from the import statements? I did not, because I'm actually using them elsewhere. I was just curious if I cleaned up my import statement successfully. We don't need it in register, but I do have that error state handler in login, so we're leaving the useState hook. Again, just me kind of thinking as a more experienced dev, I'm like, wait, I have import statements elsewhere that should be able to get cleaned up because of that useForm hook. But here I'm going to bring in useState so we can actually visualize this here. All right, so here we go. We only have one value we're going to have to worry about here. I don't really care about calling it. I mean, let's call it body. I mean, it's going to be the body of our request ultimately. So, well, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. useState string, empty string for now, and I'm curious what this ends up looking like as we build it out. So instead of that, let's do the following. We're going to do a set body of e.target.value as they write. And what I'd like to do is simply inspect with my Chrome inspection tools and the React Dev tools in particular what it looks like when we fill out this component here. Okay, so test new lines. Cool. What does that look like in state? Components, we're going to have to find it in our component dev tree here. Ooh. Never seen this before. This is weird. Did I manage to break something? Interessante. I don't have any massive errors, do I? Compile with one error, expression defected. That's probably during my autosave being written. Expression detected in app views index. AddNote. No, everything should be Gucci. I don't see any particularly bad code. That's all fine and dandy. Yeah, I mean, it's been compiling safely since then. Interesting. I've never run into this before. What troubleshooting instructions does it provide? Installation with React Native. I've never had it not work before, so I'm curious what it means when that's not happening. I don't see the troubleshooting instructions here anywhere. Like I said, all my time developing React, that's the first time I've actually seen it not be able to load the tree. Does it work just fine on other components or other? Huh. What is it not like about this? Because it was working in the previous video without too much issues. I wonder if there's like an update or something. You know, okay, well, I'll deal with this off camera and maybe make a little lesson out of it. But for now, we can fix this whole fiasco by, rather than looking at state, just simply doing this instead. As we set the body, we'll just console log it, right? So here we go. Again, not my favorite way to do it, but it's going to have to work. So, test. It's going to be one behind because that's how renders work. New line. Okay, and as we see, it is indeed remembering that I have spaces in between these. And how is it telling that? Well, how's it going to look when we send it to our server is the question here, right? So if I take this and stringify it, what's going to happen? Because remember, this is what our request body is going to be sent to our server as a JSON stringified body. So now I want to see what that looks like when I test this here. Aha! So What a text area will do when we stringify vertical lines that are being captured by a text area, they're going to be stored as \n's when there is a new line. Because honestly, your notes aren't going to be just one wrapped entire line. That'll be like you'll be jotting down information down the way as you go. So if you want to preserve new lines, the text area will do that once you stringify that value. It will be done so via \n, which allows us to do something cool in displaying our notes down the line. But I wanted to point this out here as it's a lesson that I learned and I like to teach my students when they graduate, and how to, again, add those little extra steps to their application, right? So that was the thing I was trying to show y'all about what these things do. But now that I have that, I don't really care anymore, because, I mean, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to now import my useForm hook from up1, utilities, useForm, values, handle changes. Cool. It's going to start as a singular string, I suppose. The on change is going to now say handle changes. It seems to be happy with my TypeScript type, assuming that I can add it to HTML text area elements. Looks good to me. This will now need, in order for that to work properly, a name. We'll call it body. Surprise, surprise. I'm going to call it the same thing my server expects it as. You don't have to do that, and in some cases, that could end up coming back and biting you in the rear when you have like the same name in the same request body in the same column for your databases. If one changes, the whole thing could break apart. But I want to point out, I'm just kind of keeping it simple for myself by calling these fields the same names as what my request body is expecting. Then from there, it needs to be a... No, the values is an empty string initialized, unlike the object I was dealing with earlier, so I don't have to do that short circuit like I had to do in my other things. But no, that's not going to work, is it? I just realized. Oh my goodness, I'm dumb. Because I have set values to be expected to always be an object. So, well, that's going to be the values of my thing there, and now that I need to do values.body. There we go. So because I made my useForm handle changes always update with an object, because I don't have any kind of tests to say, hey, if it's an object, do this kind of set state. If it's a number or string value, we can just go do something else. But because I've always set it up to be an object, I got to follow that rule set there. So there you go. That's why I just made it an empty body value, and that way I can click this button and hopefully have a successful post request, right? So we're going to say const handle submit will be an event occurring on a mouse event on an HTML button element. And we're going to say prevent the default action of refreshing the page. Or again, I could just go add type equals button to that button to not have to worry about this. But I'll go ahead and add my on click that will say handle submit. Okay. And from there, we don't have a note service to add a new note. So we're going to go to, let's see, collapse all these. Well, views we need to open since that's where we're working. In services notes, we need to have one for const add new note or something like that equals a sync payload. It's going to be clearly a, do I have this anywhere else I can copy? No, of course not. Key string, probably strings for a long while. String value. It's going to have a try catch block, and it's going to attempt to add a new note. I will add that there, and let's go remind ourselves what that API request looked like. Again, rec body of just, well, an object with a property of body. It's of type JSON. It has authorization headers, which thankfully our base service post should include all that for us, which is kind of awesome. And what's the response for adding a new note here? Let's go find out, right? ID and message. So we can daisy chain that to our component if we want to. I could say const ID. So that's destructuring it from the response here. Should it succeed and resolve this promise, I'm going to destructure the ID out. And that's what I'll be also returning from this function when we get there. So post, return the ID to the component so I could do something cool. API, notes post request. Yeah, it's API notes. And it should take that payload and simply daisy chain it in from our function. And if an error occurs, daisy chain it up to the component so we can handle it from our .catch and do something from our UX perspective there. There is our adding a new note service that takes the ID if it succeeds the promise, and we can do something cool with that in our notes here. So we're going to bring in import notes service from up1 services notes. And we'll say, hey, note service, here you go with values. Then, dot add new note. I mean, I guess we could call it add new. Oh, no. Okay, whatever. This is fine. Add new note values. Then when it resolves, get the ID that I'm returning from that promise, and we could do something with it. For now, I'm going to console log it. And then on our catch, again, the redundant error message log, because it's already happening from my base service. Okay, but again, in the future, I'll probably be removing these console logs and replacing them with like set states or modals or a toast that pops up with something that went wrong, rather than just console logging them redundantly over and over again. But there we go. That's what we got going on. So let's see if it works. It should just log an ID if we have a new note. So let's do DnD ipsum. Which one was the one I used? This one. Here we go. I'm going to copy 2 of the paragraphs now. Okay. The leading spaces always piss me off. But there we go. Now we have a note with 2 paragraphs. That's new for us. And let's see what happens if I jot that down. Survey says, show me an ID. We got an ID, y'all. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go to our list of notes. What did it start with? Adjacent animal type compulsion. That's the top one. So view full note. And as we see, the 2 paragraphs there are just jammed together. That's all that happened. Right? But technically, that right there, I believe, is where our, ability score loss. Yeah. This is the start of a new paragraph. So how can we handle that from a component view perspective, right? So we saw that in my console log tests of adding new notes that the \n was indeed there. But because our details component has no logic about that, it just takes the full string and the \n's just render as nothing. We haven't told it to do any logic around \n. So I'll show you something we could do there in a moment. But before that, why did I console log the ID? Well, if I have the ID, what can I do? I can bring in the useNavigate hook from React Router DOM. useNavigate, call that hook. Instead of just console logging it, we can call navigate and go to /notes/ the notes ID. So upon creating a new note, we can automatically navigate to it, which I think is pretty cool. Let's go get some new ipsum. Just 1 paragraph. Let's go. I want to have a word that starts with something other than A. There we go. Let's copy this paragraph. Add a new note. I want to refresh the project. Hold on. Add a new note. Fix that leading space that DnD ipsum provides. Jot that down and check that out. It automatically, this is a huge fucking console window here. There we go. So we have our detail view now automatically being routed to upon adding a new note. Maybe you want that feature, maybe you don't. You could always have it stay here because maybe you're jotting that down to save it and you keep on typing it out. It depends on what kind of functionality you're looking for. But yeah, where's command? There it is. Command, view full note. Like I said, it automatically gets added and we get routed there automatically from the AddNote view. I think that's a pretty cool feature and I thought that was super cool when I first graduated from Covalence and I found that trick out. But now Andrew or myself teach that to pretty much all of our students. Like all the cool stuff that Andrew and I build in our side projects, we're like, how can we take this and turn it into a teaching moment for our students? Like that's our personal, not like ethos, but it's like our goal. Like we do so many cool, goofy side projects, and we're like, how can we show off to our students what we've learned and also teach them something in the process? But there you go. I thought that's a really cool thing to know how to do. But guess what? We have CR done in our process here, y'all. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. But we are not quite done. We are not quite done. So we're going to head back to our note details view, and we're going to wonder, can we do something here? Details.body. There's a \n that exists inside of there, and can we do something about it? Well, the answer happens to be Yes. If we know the existence of a \n exists in this body string value we're currently displaying, we can find it, and we can even split the string into an array of multiple paragraphs. If we have an array of multiple paragraphs, what's the React combo? We map through that array and display each paragraph individually. Now, paragraphs cannot be nested in other paragraphs. So I will be changing this P to a div. And now we're going to say, hey, split the body anywhere you see a \new line. That's going to return an array, which we're going to immediately map through. And we're going to call each element of the array a paragraph. Now, I do not have unique IDs for this paragraph, right? But I can use, and again, this is dicey. Using indexes of arrays typically isn't a good idea, but there's not going to be a lot of re-rendering of this paragraph in real time. So we don't have to worry about our index positions changing. The only way they're going to change is if we go to a different view, call an update function, and return the details view. It'll call the details back in, and it'll be a full re-render anyway, right? We're not going to be re-rendering the paragraph in real time where we have to worry about indexes changing. So I will use the second argument to capture the index of each string's split value here, okay? So because I haven't told it what my details body is because of my type, we'll say it's going to be all strings for now. There we go. Now it knows that paragraph is a string and the IDX is what it is. We're going to do an implicit multi-line return. What I will say is we're going to include what am I doing? We're going to return a new paragraph that will end in a BR that will be each paragraph text. And the key for this paragraph will be an interpolated para IDX IDX. That way they all have a unique key for each paragraph we're rendering through. This is one of the other things, along with that navigate thing, that I discovered after I graduated that now we just teach to our students. And I'm like, that's super cool. That's a really cool detail to know how to do. But what that means is we can now go to our double paragraph page, refresh to see the new component code, and voila. We are now actively making new paragraphs. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think that's just pretty cool to know how to do. Yeah. All right. Now that we have that little tidbit figured out, what is next, folks? How about we add a new button here? All right. We have a go back button. How about we have a delete this note button? That's actually one that's going to be fairly simple to code. So let's go figure it out. I'm going to add a let's put it up here. Let's put it up here. I don't know why. I'm just feeling it up here. A new bouton element that will be an X or a delete. This note. Oh, brother, this guy stinks. This will be a new note that is going to be deleting a new note. So we'll say up yonder, make a new function, handle delete. It will be an event occurring. Even if we don't use the event, I'm going to go ahead and add it in here just in case Areno. Okay. And handle delete. Okay, so clearly this is going to be doing a fetch request. So let's go take a look at what that entails. We need to go to API notes and pass in the ID. Do we have the ID in this component? Yes, we had to in order to fetch its data, so we are good there. It needs to be nobody, and it needs to be authorized, which base service automatically does for us. So this should be fairly simple to implement as well with the extra work we did in those previous videos. Like I said, it's like all this stuff kind of ended up helping us out in the long run. Const destroy note async ID string try catch throw error. And deleting a note, I think, got us a message, but if it fails, it fails. I don't really care what it returns to me, right? So I'll say await base service dot destroy API, interpolate it as API notes / whatever ID I pass in. No payload required. And if it happens to succeed, that's awesome. Didn't I have something like that somewhere where I had, like the validation thing? If it throws an error because of a bad status code, it'll catch it and daisy chain it up, and we can do something from there. Otherwise, I don't really care what the response is. Just make sure the promise successfully resolves. So there we go. Should be easy enough. All right, note details. What that needs to happen is note service is already here. Destroy note, pass in the ID, which will be in scope, thankfully, thanks to hooks. If it succeeds, do something. If it errors, again, redundant console log for now until I decide how I want to handle these. Okay, so if it succeeds, well, the note's deleted, so maybe I should be re-navigated to the notes page. Okay, so we're going to do that. And we'll say use navigate. I'll put it before the link, so the two hooks are first, and then the component is after that. There we go. Const navigate equals use navigate. And we're going to navigate back to the notes page if it successfully resolves the delete promise. Otherwise, just log what the error message is a second time, because our base service already console logs all error messages. Okay, you know what? I've been saying that constantly, so why don't we just go remove that? Right? Why don't I just delete this console error? Because I'm already going to be console logging all these dang errors from my catches anyway. Why? Why torture myself? Okay, there we go. Handle delete. Let's blow up this note. I don't like it anymore. This note stinks. Boom. Deleted. Reroutes us back here, and there's one less. Right? View full note. This one sucks. Remove it. This one sucks. Remove it. There you go. See? We have our CRD now done. We have CRUD done. Now all you need to do is add the U to get CRUD. Because now we are on our final piece of the puzzle, which is updating notes as the final fundamental feature of this dang thing technically being correct. Or done, right? Dunion rings. Here we go. This particular little tidbit here will be very similar to our adding a new note function, as you will see. How about we call this the update note.tsx? I'm going to, we're straight up going to do that. We're straight up going to take our AddNote function and just copy that sucker over. I'm going to change the name from AddNote to UpdateNote using, again, the Command D, basically, or Control D on Windows and probably Linux, Command D on Mac, to find and replace a name variable name very quickly, right, across multiple instances. Fancy find and replace. That's all it is. For updating a note, I don't need this handle submit here for now. I will be using a use navigate, and I will be using the same useForm hook, thankfully. So all that part is going to be about the same. Instead of jot that down, we're going to say, like, change it up. I mean, I should just say save changes would be the proper way to do it, but I like keeping things goofy. Change it up! Smacking the microphone is going to be what it needs to be here, okay? So, change it up. Let's go take a look not take a look. We have to add to our index first. Update note. Okay. Good there. Find our app. And also, I think it should be privated as well. So we're going to go ahead and add that here. Again, if you guys are seeing this and you know some advanced routing techniques, you're like, all these privates can be wrapped under one route, dude. I'm like, I know, we'll get there when we get there. Let's go ahead and add this to our list here. Update note. Notes, :ID, update. Update. Again, I want it to be a distinct route away from ID new ID. I want it to be ID update. Add that to our server configuration as well. Really got to make that JSON file and stop talking about it. Notes, :ID, update is a safe path for that. Our navbar should also include that as a component. Update note. Now, again, this cannot be added to our navbar. JK, LMAO. We're not adding it to our navbar. Why? Because my navbar wouldn't be able to know what note ID I'm trying to update, because this will be important to know which note we're updating, right? We have to know which one we want to update, which means we're going to go back to our note details, and next to maybe go back, we'll have a button that says edit note that will indeed take us to that path. // we have the ID available, don't forget, for fetching its details, so we have the ID available. So we'll say go to notes / interpolate the ID / update. That should take us to the edit note path and load that simple looking component, only if we're logged in. So let's go give her a whirl to make sure that's the case. Refresh, notes, get view full note, go back, we know where that takes us, edit note, there we go. And the path is working and we're good to go. If I even refresh this page, the server recognizes it as a front-end client path and lets the client handle the code from there. Looking good. Alrighty then, y'all. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. From here, we are going to now, this is no details, but we are done there. Update note is where the action is at. So let's take a look at our tab of how we edited a note. It was a put request, API notes / ID. It had authorization and a body of just body. Basically, whatever the edited content needs to be, we just kick back to the server and let it edit our note for us. I think I deleted the note. Oh, it did. Okay, so I had this note still. Okay, so it says note updated successfully. Let's change this to fighter ability send. Note updated successfully. List of notes. Ooh, that note is gone. That's not good that's giving me that message. I think I didn't have affected row 0 as that technically being a thing. So hold on here. Something's not the way it should be at the moment, unless I have it. Yeah, let's grab this one. That's interesting that worked that way. Again, probably a decision I made back on the back end and screwed it all up. Yeah, okay, there we go. It was strangely telling me it's updating that note, even though technically I didn't update anything. And I'm sure I covered this when I built that out. Yeah, I said that, hey, because we have no logic about handling the response, right? It just said, hey, as long as the promise resolves, if there's no note to update in the database, a where clause without an ID that it matches, that's not an error. It just says, hey, I ran the update statement successfully because the syntax was correct, but I couldn't find a note to update. So that'd be an affected rows of 0. So honestly, I should add that logic here to say, hey, if the result is affected rows 0, we can say no note found to edit by that ID or something like that, right? We should probably keep that in mind. And I'm going to deal with that down the line when I regret it. Okay. So updating a note should be as simple as that. We have the ID, we have a JSON payload, and we're going to have authorization, which is set up for us by base fetch as is. So let's add this as a quick service. Const update note or edit note, whatever you want to call it, async. We're going to pass in the ID string and the payload of the note, which at the moment should just be body string, but we're going to go ahead and prepare for adding more properties in the future. Is going to run that try catch, throw the error up to needlessly log it from the component side of things, and we're going to say let's await a call to base service dot put to the path of API / notes / the ID and pass up a payload of what our edited note value shall be. There we go. Update that note, add that to the export list, and here we go. From here, we want to edit this note and navigate away. So we're going to add that handle update function. We're going to say it's going to happen as a mouse event on an HTML button element, as we have been. We're going to call our notes service. We're going to call it to update our note, passing in the ID of our note and the values from our useForm hook. I know ID is a red underline. Give me a moment. Just coding out this boilerplate. And we're going to navigate it back to this note's details on the front end. So we can just go back to navigating and viewing the note's details upon successfully updating it. So from here, auto import screwed me up here, y'all. That's where that came from. Okay. Use params. This indeed had params available, so I will say grab the ID from the URL bar because I need to know what ID I'm updating and where to navigate back to, and bada bing, bada boom, just like that. We are missing a closing bracket. There we go. Cool. All right. Let's add this to our onClick as well. Handle update. And we should be good to go to save this file, let it recompile or rebundle and refresh. Let's go! Edit this note. See, so this is something else that I teach my students to take into account. It's just common UI, UX stuff that you'd expect. You would expect that the note's value here would already be filled in. We are going to handle that in 2 different ways here in just a moment. For now, let's just go ahead and copy this value, click on Edit Note, paste it here. We're going to say, hey, we're going to just tell our users, hey, before you go edit it, make sure you copy it first, LMAO. Let's change it back to Battle Master. Change it up. All right. Anyone know what happened? It submitted the form because I forgot to include type equals button or e.prevent default. So it refreshed the page before the asynchronous code finished, and it could successfully run my JavaScript code to navigate away. It refreshed the page, which just simply reinitialized our first render and called it a day. But if we go to our notes, it does say Battle Master. Let's change it back to Fighter and see what happens after I add that event.prevent default. Paste. Fighter. Change it up. There we go. And we're navigated right on back to where it needs to be successfully. And that right there is our update function technically done, which means we are fundamentally completed on our CRUD operations. Oh my god, I cannot believe it took this long to get there. Surprise, surprise, when you're having to like code an example and explain your choices along the way, pros and cons. Well, we're not, pros and cons and lots of trade-offs by having to write everything ourselves, right, y'all? There's been a lot of that along the way, but I cannot believe we finally got there. But more importantly, the user experience of clicking edit note and saying you should have copied it, you dummy, it's probably not that great. And again, I mentioned this in last or second to last video where there are 2 different ways to handle this, stateful and stateless routing. We can pass along via a link click right here the entirety of the note's body to fill into that form. But the problem is, if anyone ever visits, let me just show y'all. So here's how you do it. There's in version 6, it used to be that you would change this to an object. Remember early on in our videos, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe they changed it on me. There's now a new prop you can pass link component called state. So we can pass in whatever we want. So what if I happen to decide to pass in the details.body as the state value in this link? I should probably make an object, but whatever. I'm going to just pass in the details body, a string value, directly to this link. What does that do for me on the update components? Well, like I said, we can bring in, I think it's use location. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be embarrassed, man, if this ain't it, y'all. Const destructure state from the location object, because I don't care about anything else. And again, because my React dev tools are being weird, let's go ahead and console log my state value here. Are they still being weird? Did I just render something it didn't like? Like I said, I'm going to investigate this off camera, and maybe the next video I'll start with what happened and how I fixed it. But either way, let's go and test it out. So right now, if I refresh this, I did get here from a link click, didn't I? All right, what if I do this? I'm going to hit enter my URL bar. So technically, I got here by pasting a link somebody gave me or a bookmark that I saved. Like if I save this as a bookmark and I try and arrive here, I'm clicking a first fresh load of my web page, which means there is no state to fill in. It's null. But if I got here from a link click, that came from this page because technically I do not have body. So null.body through an error. Wow. That was the initial render getting screwed up by that. That is highly interesting. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's not interesting. That's expected because I put null.body on the, this is not any kind of conditional render. This is on the initial render, so I have to make sure that after my state updates with the note details, that it then successfully loads that correct link down there. I'm pretty sure that should be what the problem was. Let's try that again. And check out what's in my console log right above my head there. It is the notes information that I need to see, right? So this note, edit note, voila. I'm now carrying the entire note's body as state across those clicks, right? View full note, edit note. So we can say, so long as that value is not null, we can set that to state as an example here, right? So what we can say is, rather than just console logging state, we can say, hey, my initial value can be, as long as I have a state. Oh God, why did I write it this way? I will have to say, as long as state is not null, if state is not null, short circuit body state, otherwise default to the right hand side. This is stupid as crap. Why did I do it this way? And this was one of those things that, even though I've been coding for a while, I make a decision along the way to like dumb something down via my link click, and all of a sudden over here it winds up being kind of goofy. Oh boy. No, I can make it way easier than this. What am I doing? I way overthought that problem. Technically, an empty string is still considered falsy. Oh God. Let's go back and test what I had a moment ago. Hold on. Let's redo. Oh, I already screwed it all up with my undos and redos. What did I attempt to do, y'all? I attempted to do something goofy like, if state is not null, which is a truthy statement, then return an object of body with the state value inside of it. Otherwise, default to an object with body empty inside of it. Because this is a falsy value in JavaScript, I got to be careful here. So let's see what the heck I've managed to destroy here. Nothing, evidently. Okay. Well, clearly, I can't even inspect it because of my tools here. So, because that state value is a string. If it's null, then I could just do I figured that would work how I expected it to. This is more annoying than it should be. Let me test something here, y'all. Because the whole purpose of this was to say that this is not supposed to work in the event that I do like legit like come over here from a URL click, because there is nothing to get from location state. However, I was expecting it to, if I edit the note, it should have come in there. So if you're all in the comments ready to tell me what I'm screwing up here or what I'm overthinking, right? Because if it comes in through the initial, before this all happens before the initial render, these are instantiated. So this should be fine as long as it's there, right? It was null when there was none. What if I reverse this? Again, am I overthinking this? The good old not operator, breaking my brain since 2016 or 2015, whenever I started coding, right? Breaking my brain. I just cannot think with the not operator correctly. It just breaks me for some reason. Yeah, so again, if I click on this via like a saved bookmark, there is no state carried from a link. This is a stateless link, which means it's null, which means nothing should be here, which is a dumb idea anyway, right? That's dumb. But if I click on the note and have a click on a link that carries state over, it auto fills in the field, which is what we wanted in the first freaking place, right? Battle, master, ability drain action, change it up. It successfully edited the note. Oh my God, I cannot believe I overthought it like that. This is, I want to leave that as unhappy face to come fix later. That's my note for that. All right. The whole purpose of this demonstration was that if I come here from a link click like this, again, the React Router DOM is very good at what it does. If I hard refresh, no. If I go to home and I click, then I come back and click this link. Right. Okay. Again, React Router DOM's location and state changes are very good at what it does. So even though I refreshed on the same page, it recognized that and it didn't re-render anything. But if we look at this now, there is no note to change up here. So if I save this, I don't know why. Again, why would your user save this URL to their bookmark bar? Maybe you have like a boomer user, maybe like me, that bookmarks their update form onto their bookmark bar. If they do that, they're going to keep on coming here and having no note to update. So we got to provide some fallback logic in the event that that's the case. How do we do that? Well, again, we saw that state was null in the event that they got here with that kind of logic. And we can circumvent this whole ding-dang process with our useState function. Okay? And not useState, useEffect. We can say, hey, after the initial render has occurred, I need you to check on something for me because it could have some effect on this value changing, right? The state's never going to change. Okay, so we can say if state is not null, console log, please. Console log, please. And stop here. Now I could say state and then render what it is. Otherwise, we can render that it has a value. So rather than break my main with a not operator, let's go ahead and test our quick little useEffect here. Currently no state. There we go. Again, the React strict mode is causing 2 re-renders, hence why we see double logs. If I now click on, and I didn't write a phrase saying it's in that if statement, but whatever. AddNote, we have state as a value there. Okay, so, yeesh. Double checking, because now I'm just paranoid after that one screw up I had. That makes sense. That's what I'm expecting to see there. This makes sense because that's what I'm expecting to see there. Okay, cool. In the event there is no state when we get here, I do indeed want it to do something. I need it to do the following. Go to the note service, get OneNote's details, pass in its ID, and do the exact same thing this does. So we're going to just copy and paste this useEffect into UpdateNote to say if there is no note state, I need it to do this. Why are you fussing at me? Because there is no set details. That makes sense. And why is note service? I called it note service. Oh no! Again, this is why I hate. This is why I hate dealing with. What's it called? Default exports, because I do dumb crap like that. Okay, so there's no details to set in this component. There is no details to set in this component, so I need to instead call my useForm hook to let me manually set my changes. I don't have that. Handle changes is for inputs, but I did, if you recall, pass in as a destructurable property the set values function that came directly from my useState hook, which means I can call set values and simply say the data I retrieve back from this service should be getting a full notes details. A full notes details has like first name. Let's go take a look in Postman as a test. They have ID, user ID, body created at first name. All I care about in this case is the body. So I'm going to say set my values directly to have a property called body, which will come from the data body that I just retrieved. Okay, so that data.body is this representation right here, data.body. Technically, it's a details view. Let's try that instead. I don't have this one anymore. Copy that. Paste it here. Boom. Send. There. Data.body is all we care about to fill out this field here. So in the event we navigated here with no state, I'm going to go ahead and call my service to fetch it and retrieve it. Refresh. There it is. So now, regardless of whether I bookmark an update field for some dumb reason, works just fine. Or if I navigate here from my AddNote feature, it shows up just fine. And there we go. That is a full-fledged, pretty dang cool edit field to learn some cool stuff along the way. We've done it, folks. We have CRUDed up this entire place. We have CRUDed up this React app. It does not look pretty, but my God, it functions like a dream. What can I say? Yeah, I'm going to end this video here. It's been a while. I think ending it on finishing all our CRUD app routes is fun. Next video, I don't want to style. No, styling's not my thing. But maybe it'll be time. I mean, I can only push it off for so long. So yeah, maybe I'll have some time before the next one posts, so maybe I can go ahead and think of how I'm going to end up styling this whole application anyway. So I'll see you on the next video where I'll decide what I want to do then. So ta-ta for now.